Let's take a look at page 3, where we can further analyze word structure, including word length, stress, and word shapes in terms of sequences of consonants and vowels.
What is the purpose of this page?
To analyze the data at the syllable level and above. That means we look at things like number of syllables and variety of syllable shapes, such as consonant clusters and stress patterns. You will also use this page to compare the client's data to adult language targets.
So, what do all these letters stand for?
Well, here you have CV sequences. C means consonant and V means vowel. All the way across, you can see different word shapes are represented as CV sequences.
What about WI, WM, and WF?
Those refer to the word position of the sound, which can be word initial, word medial, or word final position.
And the S and W under stress?
The capital S stands for strong stress, the small s stands for secondary stress, and the W stands for weak syllable or unstressed.
So how do we get started?
First, let's take a look at the top section, A, where we're only looking at the forms used by the client. It's broken down into sections for 1, 2, and 3 syllable words used frequently by the client. Let's take an example from Craig's data. Begin by looking at word shapes that Craig uses for 1 syllable words. Does he use 1 syllable words?
Yes, looks like he matches word length up to 3 syllables actually.
We're briefly leaving the scan form per se and using PowerPoint boxes. I'm using PowerPoint because these boxes are a bit small.
Back to word length. He would get an X or check mark in the 1 syllable word box.
Now the word shapes. Here you'll notice many instances of CV productions, so we mark the CV option as a strength by coloring it green. What do you think about CVVC?
CV is a strength, but in his data we can only see 1 instance of CVC structure. Because it's not very frequent, we should mark that as a need in red.
Yes, exactly. Now let's look at combinations of consonants within the words. There can be a single consonant in word initial or word final position, and consonant clusters with 2 consonants and consonant clusters with 3 consonants. How do you think we would mark this section for Craig?
Well, looking at his data, he only seems to use single consonants. I can't seem to find any instances of consonant clusters. So consonant clusters would therefore be a need, and we would color them red. In terms of single consonants, the word initial position is a strength because he has it in every word, so green. But as for consonants in word final position, there is only 1 instance, so that also would be red for a need.
Great, so now that we've checked off all the sections in the 1 syllable box, let's look over here at the summary section. This will help us later to quickly review the data that we're currently analyzing. So for Craig, we can see here that word length is a strength for him because he's consistently able to say single syllable words even if the shape is not correct. Let's look at the word page. The shape is CVVC, but the length is 1 syllable. Craig produces a word shape of CV with a long vowel, which is not a match in shape, but in terms of length, it's still a 1 syllable word and therefore a strength.
So he has 1 syllable words, but the shapes are still very basic, CVV. So we will need to work on the shapes of 1 syllable words. So length is a strength and shape is a need. So what do we record in the most complex CV shapes section?
Here we look at the variety of single syllable word shapes that Craig produced. For example, he produced mom as CV, mouth as CVV, and tub as CVC. Now we record all of those to show the variety of shapes he's able to produce. There may be some word shapes that were never assessed and that can be reported in the not elicited section.
Okay, I think I get how to do 1 syllable words, but what about longer words?
First step is to check the data for longer words. Just a quick glance at the data shows that yes, he is using 2 syllable words, so we can check that off.
Okay, so similar to the one-syllable word section, we now look for the variety of shapes he produces, right?
Yes. Does he produce CV sequences? Looking at the data, we see he produces CVV for airplane, which would be included in this shape. As well, he has some words with glottal stop as the second consonant. Continue on recording the different word shapes used by the client. Okay, so here's something we haven't seen yet. What about stress patterns?
According to what our goals are, it might not be necessary to look at stress patterns, especially if there are no concerns during the data collection. It looks like you simply record what stress patterns the client uses. For example, candle follows a strong weak pattern, so that would be recorded. The default or typical stress pattern tends to be strong weak, so it is worth noting if the client produces any unusual patterns.
The rest of the section is identical to what we've just worked on with 1 and 2 syllable words. Be sure to fill out the summary box on the side after completion.
Okay, so that was section A, looking at just the client's data. So what about section B, comparison with the adult target?
In this bottom section, we can compare Craig's data to the adult target in terms of length and stress, including whether there are any syllable deletion, extra syllables added, or a change in stress patterns. It also has a spot to record the content of syllables in terms of CV shape. For instance, are consonants added or deleted? Are consonant clusters reduced? Or is there an overuse of any particular consonant or vowel?
So what happens if he deletes one syllable?
Well, that can't happen because then there would be no word. So we just start over here at the 2-syllable level. You would check yes if the client deletes from 2-syllable word and state in what context, for example, final syllable deletion.
Okay, so for example, if Greg had just said air or pain for airplane, that would have counted as syllable deletion, but it looks like he maintains the correct number of syllables in all words, so we would leave it blank. Is this the same process for multisyllabic words?
You've got it. And syllable addition is essentially the same thing, except syllables are added rather than deleted. This is also called epenthesis.
I think I'm getting the hang of this. Stress shift is when the stress pattern the client produces is different from the adult stress pattern. But what about the last category?
Yeah, exactly. The last section is for when the syllable is not completely deleted, but is somewhat reduced in content. For instance, a cluster reduction occurs or a phoneme substitution in weak syllables. This generally applies primarily to unstressed syllables, often the word initial unstressed syllables. So that section was looking at length and stress patterns. The next part, we'll take a closer look at CV shape of syllables, or in other words, each individual syllable's content. Everything is divided into word position, word initial, word medial, and word final, and looks at addition and deletion of consonants.
This looks pretty straightforward. Craig doesn't add any consonants, but he tends to delete single consonants in word final position and reduces clusters almost always in all word initial and word medial positions.
Yes, and you will look more in depth at clusters on page 5. Now, the optional counts at the bottom, you will calculate the percentage of matches for word length and word shape.
Word length is the number of syllables. So long as the number of syllables match, it counts as correct, even if the shape of the syllable is wrong. For example, even if a consonant was deleted, it is still counted as correct because it has the same number of syllables.
And word shape is the CV sequences within the syllables. The type of consonant doesn't matter as long as there is still a consonant or vowel in the respective position. What would count as a mismatch in CV sequence would be a cluster reduction.
And down here, we can summarize the overall strengths and needs of the client for easy access when determining goals and treatment strategies.
That's right. We've completed the analysis of Craig's word structure. Thanks, Jeff. On to the next page.